If anything goes wrong, you work with aeroplanes, right? So this should be
there's
be
a way to
easy.
fix it.
Thank you for joining me in a black cab today for a little drive.
Thank you for having me.
Should we do some intros?
Yes, we should. Well, I mean, great to see you again.
Yeah,
first of all, it was like 2 weeks ago I saw you in SF.
Yeah.
But didn't know we'd be doing this. This is great fun. So yeah, I'm glad.
Well, tell us a little bit about you to start off with. So, Finn, where are you from and what are you up to?
Yes, well, I'm Finn Quinlan, CEO and co-founder of Fleetcraft. I grew up in Ireland, in Dublin, studied mechanical engineering, went to the States for a bit to study in Georgia Tech, and yeah, I ended up moving from mechanical engineering into aerospace, working on developing Ireland's first 2 satellites, doing like the thermal work on that. Ended up working in a transport startup for a few years, and then probably like 2-3 weeks before I was supposed to start in Boeing and Airbus's manufacturer, Spirit Aerosystems, I decided I'd start in EF in fall 2024 cohort.
So what was the moment where you suddenly realised it was time to be a founder?
I don't know if there is like a click moment, to be honest, but I think something that was special for me was when I was working on the satellite work, I feel like I inherited this massive project and I felt quite unsure at the time, and to be able to go from just a satellite model to something that's in space now, and I reached out for a lot of mentorship. I ended up working with someone called Ron Behe, someone who worked on the James Webb Telescope and who developed the software that Airbus use. And I think I was like, oh, I can do things when I just put my mind to them, and that really changed my outlook. And
yeah, you can just do things.
Yeah, and I think you can just do things. And I think EF, when I started talking to people from EF, it was like, oh, this is actually something I can do as well. And I mean, I've always been passionate about aviation and aerospace, so it made sense for me.
So you joined the cohort, and at that point, did you have an idea? You're obviously a kind of aerospace obsessive, but did you know what you wanted to work on?
I didn't know what I wanted to work on. I knew I wanted it to be in aerospace, and it became incredibly clear very quick once I met my co-founder Amar. So his background also aerospace, helped set up an airline, worked in aerospace as well before moving into AI. And once we started working together, our vision came very clear, and then it was much easier. And Fleetcraft kind of just unraveled from both of us rather than just like popping up one day.
Was there any moment where you knew that he was the right, because at EF you get the opportunity to experiment with a bunch of different co-founders. How did you know how to make that decision or who to pick?
It was the second day of EF, so it happened super quick. We both sat down on the second day outside in the office that we're actually now based in Fora, and we started talking about the finite difference method, which is something you do to model in mechanical and aerospace engineering, and we just talked about it for ages, and somehow that conversation ended up in aircraft leasing. And just throughout that conversation, both of us were just like bubbling off each other, and it was super clear we had this shared vision. And like immediately from then I knew I wanted to work with Amar, at least on the short term. And then after seeing what he's like and how hard he works and how much he cares about what we do, it was like a no-brainer for me.
So you guys managed to get some traction pretty quickly, but I think one of the questions for first-time founders is always, how do I actually get those first customer, when you have nothing? Like, how do you work with some of the biggest airlines in the world? How do you get them to take you seriously?
Yeah, well, I think first you need to be really clear what you're looking to get out of them. And for us, like, Fleetcraft has always been from day one about a vision of enhancing humanity's access to the sky through making innovation in aerospace cheaper, faster and safer. That's what we always wanted to do. And like the journey to doing that was through MRO, so maintenance, repair and overhaul. That is an industry that's facing a major crisis, a 700,000 person shortage in their workforce, but is the backbone of aviation. And it's an incredibly underserved industry in terms of software. And I think we had conversations with people in that industry. We cold calls reaching out on LinkedIn, and we spoke their language. And I think they, really felt that. They were like, these guys actually aren't just looking to get some information out of me. We're having conversations about the problem in our industry. And we just built relationships. We didn't try and make sales.
So you were able to use LinkedIn, just cold messaging people, and did you get any customers from your cold LinkedIn messaging?
We did. Our first customer, who we're still working with now, was through a cold message on LinkedIn in the early weeks. It was a design partnership at the start, and then it turned into a full contract. But it's more rare, to be honest, to get a cold call full customer early stage, but it does happen for us. I think what was really important is that we built a network through those early conversations that have introed us to customers that are really important for us now. So that entire journey was important for us to do.
I do think there's something interesting about cold outreach, because for me, on the other side of the table, when I'm watching founders do that, for me it's a very clear way to understand if somebody is building something that the market wants, because cold outreach really, really works. If you're really solving a often quite niche pain point for somebody, and they are responding to cold outreach, it shows me two things. One, that pain point really matters, and two, they're not overwhelmed by other people reaching out trying to solve this problem.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of people, when we reach out to them, were like, oh, this is crazy. I can't believe this is you're trying to build AI for maintenance on aircraft. Okay, that's so cool. Let's have a conversation about it. So, we spent a lot of time refining the messaging through cold outreach, and I think what really changed for us was when we started going to conferences and started putting ourselves out there. And conferences, when you think about it, is just in-person cold outreach, because you're just walking up to random people and saying hi.
How did you? Because I assume you probably were one of the younger people in the room.
Youngest always in the room.
How did you work those conferences? Do you get a booth? How do you actually make the most of them?
Yeah, it's a good thing. I've been traveling for the past few months, actually, just going to conferences, and I always like to just have a conversation with the people, not trying to sell to them in any way, shape or form. And the thing I always say to our team now is wait for them to ask you what you do, and then you've just bought the right to sell, which is completely different to going up and being like, I'm Finn from Fleetcraft and I'll make your MRO way more efficient. Instead, have a conversation with people, because they're just normal people who are in the same industry you're in, and after a while, they'll ask you what you do, and then you can tell them. And if you're saying the right points, the things people care about, they'll ask you more, and then you can go deeper. But I think if you go in and you meet someone randomly in a conference and your first touch point is a sell, they're just immediate defensiveness, and you don't really want that.
Well, it's such a good reminder that you think you're selling to a company, but you're not. You're selling to a person.
It's always individuals, and it's always individuals that make the difference as well. I think for us, it's really pronounced, because most people we sell to are owner operators. So if you look at the aviation industry, a lot of the MROs, the maintenance organizations, their owners are the accountable manager, who's the regulatory person in the body, and they were often aircraft technicians in their past. So if you speak their language, they really get you, and it's an easy conversation. I think if you don't speak their language and come off as just a company trying to sell to them without any notion of what it takes to keep aviation flying, then it doesn't really work.
So as part of EF, you went out to San Francisco for a while. How was that experience? What was it like building in the Bay Area?
Well, first of all, it was amazing, but it was it was pretty big culture shock, I would say.
I think it's funny because often as a Brit, or Irish, sorry, you grow up on so much American culture. We watch so much American TV, so many American films. I think there's sort of an assumption that it's not that different, but it is.
Yeah, I found it incredibly different from every aspect, from meeting potential customers to meeting VCs. I thought the way people converse is they're really interested in what you do, and they're just way more receptive, I found, to young founders coming up to them. If you have a solution for their problem, they are all ears, and that's not something we experience as much. It's actually still fine in Europe, really, in the industry we're in, but it's hyper pronounced in the US, I think. And
yeah, I think that's one of the undervalued parts of spending time in the US, is that everyone knows that the funding ecosystem there is huge, but actually it's the customer market. The customer market has deeper pockets, is more risk-seeking, risk-tolerant, and it's very happy to interact with pretty young founders.
Yes, we thought it was pretty amazing when we were getting on calls with people, and they were like, "Yeah, come to our office and let's talk about it." And it was just more. It was a lot faster moving, and we really felt that in our fundraise as well. It was just not only was it faster, but people were seeking different things. So the work culture in SF is obvious, but I think people work hard everywhere. I think the crazy thing for us was the conversations we had with VCs wasn't really about like, what do you do? It was more, how can you win? How can you win the market? And it was like probably not something we were unbelievably prepared for at the start. I think EF helped a lot positioning our mind for it, but it became super clear that's what people cared about when we started fundraising, which was like maybe not obvious when you're a 23-year-old founder trying to raise for the first time, but it became obvious pretty quick.
So talk to me about the fundraising process in San Francisco. You went through our demo day, and then your round happened pretty fast.
Yeah, our round was a flash. I think we received our first term sheet in probably 5 days, and then I think we closed the round a week or two later. So it was really, really quick, and the momentum was aggressive. I think going through the EF, I guess, journey from London to SF was really, really helpful, because we, got to go through those like cliffs. Like our initial investment committee with EF felt like a cliff. Then you turn around, it feels like a small step. And I think that was a really useful way of framing. We weren't like unbelievably prepared until about, maybe a month before, and then we really kicked into gear and started getting really ready. And I think by the time demo day came around, we had our raise mapped out, in the sense we knew who we wanted to meet. We had meetings organized, and demo day was a proof point, rather than like, we need this to get meetings, which was a really good position for us to be in. And yeah, the initial meetings, once they happened, if the fund was interested, the second meeting would happen the next day, and the third would happen the day after, which was something we were not expecting. It was super, super quick, but they were all, I would almost say, even though we had pretty good commercial traction at the time, they weren't looking or seeking that at all from us. It was an important thing to prove, but they were really looking, myself and my co-founder, and what we'd done in the past, what we're looking to do, and like what type of people we are, which I think was like also probably not obvious as well. It wasn't a shock, but it was really interesting to see.
Well, I think the interesting thing about your backgrounds is that you have insane founder idea fit for people who are so young.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, my co-founder, was part of the team that helped found an airline and their maintenance organization as well, before spending years working in AI, which is an insane background to have, and very nice to work with when you're working in aircraft maintenance. I think that's really what people honed in on, and taking that background and proving that we can do it, and proving that the traction we had was real. And something that shocked me, to be honest, and I thought was an amazing thing, was the fund who we ended up going with, Sousa, those funds do a lot of due diligence, but it just happens incredibly quick. They came back to us with a document on the market after they had met like 6 or 7 CEOs of maintenance organizations and airlines in the US, and I was like, okay, fair play, you really mean business. And it was just incredibly impressive. They had conversations with these people about Fleetcraft, and they were like, okay, we're convinced. You've convinced us. And that was like, oh, that's how quick you can get traction and conviction on your idea if it's real.
Was there, if you think about somebody who's listening to this who's going to fundraise for the first time, and particularly in the US, what would be the thing that you wish you'd known at the beginning of the fundraise process that you sort of learned as you went through the process? I
think there's a lot of things that were said to me that I didn't do as well as I could have, that I would do again and do slightly differently. And I think story is so unbelievably important. If you're a first-time founder, you're in your 20s, you've got a strong background, but like, you're a first-time founder in your 20s, having a really convincing story and a really strong belief. If you've ever read Simon Sinek's book, like Start With Why, I think it's probably a must-read if you're going at SF, because I think it's how people think. It's like, how you get there is not as important as what you do now and why you're doing that. And I think, like, for us, embodying what we're doing and enhancing humanity's access to the sky was like something I probably would have put way more forward, that I think in conversations we have now, we put way more forward.
Nice.
So, story.
Were there any questions that surprised you or took you back?
Not like none of the crazy questions you hear about like your family past or anything like that. I think like we had really good relationships with the funds we ended up taking money from, but I just remember sitting at this restaurant in SF, and like we're having a normal conversation, and Misha said, like, so how are you going to make this winner takes all? I was like, oh, well, I'll let you know, but that's a great question, but like something that really takes a lot of thought.
Yeah.
And I think like if you know your story, you know how you're going to win this market, then it's not that hard of a question. But if you haven't done that story work, it's really hard.
Yeah. And it's, when VCs in the US are asking these questions, they're really expecting you to paint a picture of just how big the market could be, and that you're the kind of kingmaker of that market.
Yeah. And I think something else I realize is like although there's, the relationships you build with these VCs in person and conversations you have and emails you send, this back channel, this back current is probably stronger. And it's like, I remember getting texts from friends, and advisors from EF being like, saw you mentioned in a group chat today randomly. And it's like, people really talk, and it's really small.
They're all talking to each other the whole time.
Yeah, all the time. And it's super, super small. And everyone knows each other, which was like, it's obviously such a big industry that you don't really think that's true.
Yeah.
You kind of just like, I feel like a lot of stuff EF said, I was like, okay, is that really true? And then you look back and go, that was really true, which is humbling probably, but that was definitely crazy for us.
So we are currently driving through East London. Yes. We're just by Old Street, the Old Street roundabout. How did you decide where you were going to base an HQ Fleetcraft?
Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult question because I just spent a while talking about how great the US is and how open US customers are, and they are. I spent a lot of time in the US. I think for us, there's a few things. I think our networks are here. We hired out of our networks, and the talent in the UK is phenomenal, and a lot of talent from Europe goes through the UK, which is really helpful. I mean, EF are in London too.
Here for a reason.
Yeah, and obviously we brought on the TI who brought me on to EF, so I mean, there you go. Sorry for stealing Laura, she's great.
She's amazing.
But I think, so we're a very global business. Our customers are from Texas to Australia. It makes sense for us to be somewhere in the middle. I think, building a team out here has been phenomenal. And I think there is a culture, an amazing startup culture here like SF. It's not SF. It won't be SF, but I think companies like Delphi, for instance, Tom from my cohort decided to build out here. And I think if you raise from the States and you operate out of London, I think that's a really nice position for a company like ours to be in, where we're not a tech company selling to tech companies. They don't have to be in SF, where there is amazing AI talent here and you can bring it on, and you can kind of tap into a global market from a travel perspective, because I'm 5 weeks ago I was in Singapore, and the next week I was in SF, so it's a lot of movement.
Yeah. So why don't we wrap with your top tips for a first-time founder? So when you think through your whole journey of developing an idea, finding a co-founder, raising your pre-seed, raising your seed round, what do you wish you'd known?
I don't know if there's things I wish I'd known, because I think the experience and the details are incredibly important things, and I think as a first-time founder, you can't not experience those things. There's no skipping any of the hardship. But I think the clear things for me, if I could do it again, I would do more of, is spend as much time as you possibly can with your co-founder, build a relationship, and try and be in situations where you're moving fast enough that the relationship is tested. So not just let's test each other today randomly, but put yourself in a position where the relationship is strenuous because you're both working hard and you can trust each other. I think trust is probably the most important thing. Can I accept that this guy is going to do something, or girl is going to do something that I won't be touching on a lot, and accepting that. And then on the advice side, seek amazing people. Seek amazing people not just when you're hiring, but seek amazing people when you're looking for advice. And I think if you go to experts and you go to people who know their stuff that you don't know, you'll all be much better for it. And don't have the ego that you know everything, because you don't. I didn't. I still don't. It's helpful.
It's a process. It's a process.
It's a process and learning.
Finn, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your round. And I'm sure we'll see you very soon.
Yes, see you very soon.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you to our amazing driver as well.
Yes, thank you.